Hey guys, welcome back. So, the Harbor Freight survival knife. This knife has lately gotten kind of internet famous, mostly because of how inexpensive it is. You can pick it up at Harbor Freight or online for about $8 or $10. Now, bloggers and YouTubers like to talk trash on this knife a lot, because when it comes to your literal survival in the wilderness, maybe you shouldn't settle for a cheap $8 knife. Some might even say you'd have to be a complete moron to get one. So I got one, and it seems okay. The blade is good size. It's nice and thick, nice and heavy. It's made out of some kind of Chinese stainless steel. It's not marked. The knife handle is where you're going to run into some problems because it's hollow. It's one of these Rambo kind of survival knives where the has some stuff inside. Let's see here. Compass. I've heard that this leaks the fluid out and becomes useless. Oh my god. Aha. Comes with a mini survival kit. It's got some matches, starter, sewing kit, fishing line and a fish hook. Let's not worry about that. But like I said, the handle's where you got the problem because it's hollow, and I believe it's aluminum, so it's not very strong. So there are some YouTube videos where the handle will break right at this thin point when people try to baton wood or just overall abuse the knife. So seeing as how the handle is the weak point of this knife, thought I'd make a video where I replace the handle with something better and turn it into a nice carry knife. So let's go ahead and take it apart and see what we got. Okay, so we got the handle, the pin that holds the blade in, and the blade. Now you'll notice that the blade is not exactly ideal for putting a handle on, seeing as how it has this very short tang. So I struggled trying to think of an idea of how to attach a handle to this blade, seeing as how there's such a small amount of surface area to work with. But then I realized there is a kind of knife that utilizes just this kind of a shape, and it's one of these.
Friend. What?
Wow.
Yep. Now I know what you're thinking, because it's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh shit!
Yes! Yes! Yes!
So let's do this. So the first thing I got to do is prep the blade. I have to shape the peg that keeps the handles straight and drill the pivot holes through the blade. Uh-oh. So it turns out this blade has been hardened to the level of vibranium. I tried to drill through it with 3 different kinds of bits. I used carbide, titanium nitride, and cobalt, and nothing could punch through this thing. I'm not going to give up though. I just gotta do a little bit of outside the box thinking. I'll rethink my plan and move on from there. Alright, so I have solved the problem, I think. I just have to use the existing hole in the blade to attach some pieces that I will then drill the pivot holes through and then attach the handles to that. Now this is going to make the knife handles a little bit beefier than I had first planned, but they should still be fine. Okay, so next step, I got to make these handles. I drew up the design on the computer, printed it out, and then just glued it to the bar stock that I'm going to use. I will then carve out the shapes using a bench grinder and a Dremel tool. So nothing fancy there. Okay, so here are my handles. I've got them all cut out and polished up somewhat. So the next step is going to be to create the handle scales, which I will be making out of micarta. Micarta is a really strong handle material made out of layers of epoxy resin and paper or fabric. I'm going to use construction paper. And for this purpose, I have made this simple micarta press. So we're gonna start doing that. Okay, so here are my finished micarta handle scales. I think they came out pretty good for my first time. I chose purple and pink construction paper because, you know, prints. And I've gone ahead and marked where I'm going to cut them out to match the handles. So let's start cutting. So here they are. I have cut them and trimmed them all and sized them to their appropriate handles and drilled a couple of pinholes to keep them in place. The next step is to epoxy the handle scales to the handles and then sand them and shape them so that they're comfortable to the hand. So let's get started. So attaching, sanding, and shaping the micarta to the handles leaves me with these. I think the micarta came out great, and I can't wait to see it once it's been polished. So here are some of the smaller components that I've taken care of off camera. This is the latch that will hold the handles open or closed depending on the position of the knife. This is the small piece that goes on the bottom of the handle that the latch inserts into. These are some pieces of wood that go on the outside edge of the handles to keep the knife in place when it's closed. I've also rounded off the base of the blade and scored the areas where the epoxy will help hold it all together. Okay, boys and girls, here's everything. I've got all my component parts assembled. So the next step is final assembly. So the next thing you see should be a completed knife. It's been a long time coming, so let's do it.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
So yeah, this came out beautifully. I'm especially happy with the handles. They came out really good, nice and glossy, very good feel. The fittings look great too. Got a good polish on it. But most importantly, I'm really happy of how it fit together nice and tight. It really locked up. There's absolutely no slop to this at all. The only rattle you can hear is from the latch that holds it open and closed. It's also nice and tight when it's closed. So just close it up and latch it, and yep. And I know what you're all wondering, does it flip? Well, let's find out. Yep. So yeah, all in all, this was a great success. It came out great, and this is literally one of my favorite things now. This was a fun project. It's kind of a funny build. It's the kind of thing that makes a good YouTube video. But when I started, I wanted to take this blade and make a legit knife, a nice legitimate handle on this blade, something you could actually carry into the woods with you. So what I did was I broke the bank and bought another $8 knife, and I did put a new handle on it, and it looks like this. So this video is already running a little long, so I'm not going to go super in depth on how I did it, but I will real quick explain what I did. So this blade has no tang. The tang is the part of the blade that extends through the handle. My solution, therefore, is to create one and attach it to the blade. I've cut out and shaped 2 metal scales that will go on either side of the blade, which will form the tang. Now you'll remember from before that I cannot drill through the blade, but what I can do is grind it. So what I did is I ground 2 notches into the blade toward the handle, which I will then use 2 metal pins to lock it in place. They will attach using a combination bolt, which will go through the pre-existing hole in the blade. I've also sculpted and polished these 2 metal bits that will function as the bolster and pommel of the handle. I've also created 2 more scales of micarta using blue, yellow, and green construction paper. So let's put it all together. So here it is. You've obviously noticed that in between the handles there's a large gap, the width of the blade. We can't have that. So what I'm going to do is pack it full of an epoxy putty. I will then smooth it all off, sand it, and polish it, and we will be done. So this one, it came out really good too. First of all, the handles, these micarta, I used the yellow, green, and blue, and those are kind of bright, kind of springtime colors, and I was kind of worried about how it would come out. But just in the process of working with it, just the grime from my hands kind of darkened it as I was working with it, and it basically turned into camo. So I'm not even mad. And I'll tell you this thing is indestructible. This thing is bomb-proof. Using that epoxy putty really locked everything in, and all that metal and epoxy, it just turned this thing into a brick. So yeah, I sharpened it up, and it already fits in the sheath they provided the original knife. So yeah, I would take this into the woods anytime. So there you have it. Harbor Freight survival knife with replaced handles ×2. Would I recommend doing this yourself? Hell no. Just save up 30 or 50 bucks and get a decent one. This was hard. So anyway, that will be the end of this video. So if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. See you next time.